Can you really add boost to a junkyard small block Chevy? Let's find out. If you follow this channel, you'll know one thing about me. I love the wrecking yard. I take a lot of trips there. It's my favorite place. I can walk down the aisles and just window shop for days. I love everything that's there. But one thing I noticed on my many trips to the wrecking yard, the most common motor I see available in our junkyards is still the small block Chevy. That's right, even more so than an LS, more than the Fords, I see a ton of small block Chevys. So that begs the question, can I go to the wrecking yard, pick up a small block Chevy, put it up on the dyno and run boost like I do an LS? That's a good question. That's exactly what I wanted to find out. So we did just that. I went and got a motor, put it up on the dyno, made a few modifications to improve the power, then we added boost. Let's check it out. If you're headed to the wrecking yard to pick up a small block Chevy to make performance modifications to, here's my advice. Two things you need to look for. First, I would get a 4-bolt block. Now, you're probably not going to get to the limit of even a 2-bolt block, but a 4-bolt block is always better because it's stronger. The next thing I would look for are the latest version of the small block you can find. The reason for that is because it's going to have Vortec heads on it. And the Vortec heads are the best factory head, certainly not factory iron head, that you can get on a small block. Now sure, the later stuff you can get an L98 head or maybe an LT1 or an LT4 head. Those are much harder to find. But if you get a Vortec head, you're going to get lots of flow. Now it's not quite comparable with like a 706 LS1 or a 706 5.3 liter head, but still the Vortec head for a small block Chevy works very well and you can make plenty of power. All you'll have to do is upgrade the head a little bit to put a proper spring package on it. Then you can put a camshaft in it. But just like the LS, the small block Chevy has a limited amount of piston to valve clearance. So there's a limit to the camshaft you can run. But still, you can put a camshaft on it that's suitable, especially for that Vortec head, put a dual plane intake on it, and away you go. Now on our test, what we did was modify our basic stock short block that we got from the wrecking yard. We put heads, cam, and intake on it because I was doing it for another test. But while I had it on there, I thought, you know what I need to do? You know what I haven't done in a long time? I need to add boost to this combination. So I installed a pair of 76mm CX Racing turbos. We also had their dual core air to water intercooler, and we're doing it with a blow-through carburetor from CSU. So we had all the cooling that we needed. But this combination worked really well. I didn't run a ton of boost on it, but it got me thinking, and I want to know what you guys think. Should I do a shootout between the OG small block Chevy and like a 5.3 liter LS? And by shootout, I mean go to the wrecking yard, grab a motor, leave the stock heads, just do a spring and camshaft upgrade on both of them, and then start adding boost. Say from an S475 or maybe a VS Racing 7875 Gen 2 turbo, which I just happen to have, and find out how much power each one of them can make. I mean, naturally we're going to put ring gap in both, but can that small block 350 with the Vortec heads keep up with, say, a 5.3 liter with the 706 heads? Obviously, both of them have cams. That's something for another video. Let's get to this test, find out how our modified Junkyard 350 did, and then we can get to that next test. To start our test, we went and grabbed a late model Vortec 5.7 liter or 350 small block Chevy from the wrecking yard, and we put it up on the dyno. Now those motors will come fuel injected, but what we did was remove the fuel injection and we installed a simple carburetor. Most small block guys probably would do that, and we didn't want to fool with the factory fuel injection. So what we did was remove that, and we installed a dual plane Performer RPM intake manifold, a 750 Holly, and we ran this thing with long tube headers. We've got 1 3/4 dyno headers. We also run these when we run basically most of these motors on the dyno with a Mazir electric water pump. As I said, it had long tube headers and open exhaust behind the headers. Had a carburetor and obviously no air intake assembly or anything. But equipped in this manner, our otherwise kind of stock 350 Vortec motor produced 296 horsepower. And peak torque checked in at 373 foot-pounds. And this is kind of what you would expect of a, a smog motor, factory fuel injected deal. They always make a lot more power, torque than they make horsepower. So here's what happened after we did our modifications to this. Now we kept the short block the same, and we upgraded The important part's basically the heads, cam, and the intake. And here's the power change. It's a dramatic power change, as you can see. And what we did was we added an extreme energy cam from Comp Cams. This was a 230, 236 duration, and I'll go ahead and put the rest of the specs up here. But it's about what you can fit with the available factory piston to valve clearance, especially with the big valve in the heads that we use. Now we use a set of CNC ported RHS 200cc intake port heads, which work pretty well. And we use those mainly because we had them laying around Westech. We wanted to put an aluminum head on it, and we had these, so we installed these. We also installed an RPM air gap, and we ran the same 750 carburetor. So equipped with those modifications, our Junkyard Vortec 350 produced 405 horsepower. And as you can see, it produced a pretty broad, kind of flat torque curve, but the peak was 392 foot-pounds of torque. So it did well, and I like when we see a broad torque curve like this. This is one of the reasons I like the LS motor so well, is that when we make a good combination, we'll have a wide range where the torque is pretty flat for 1,000 RPM or more, and that's really good. It makes the thing accelerate really well. It drives nice, and this would be a good small block combination, especially one that we got from the wrecking yard. Now, when we took the heads off, we actually went ahead and took the pistons out and did a little ring gap. I didn't go max on these because we weren't going to run a lot of boost on it anyways, but we did open up to about 25 or 26 thousandths. So, and then just put it back together. We just reused the factory rod bolts and bearings and everything. That we didn't change anything. We reused those factory rings. We just took it apart and added a ring gap and then put it back together, and then put these heads, cam, and intake on. So now let's take a look and see what happened after we ran some boost. After running our naturally aspirated 350 Vortec motor from the junkyard with our modifications, we were over 400 horsepower and had a healthy torque curve, as we explained, 392 foot-pounds and 405 horsepower. So here's what it looked like before. So we gained a lot of power, but now let's take a look and see what happened when we added boost. So what I did was I configured a homemade kind of turbo system using two CX Racing 76mm turbos, which were, for what we were doing for the power level we were looking at, were kind of overkill. We probably could have used just one of them, although on a 350, a single 76 like that would have had, a little bit higher back pressure than we wanted. Plus, twin turbo always better than a single turbo, because two is better than one. So we did that, and we, rather than switch over to fuel injection, we decided to just do a blow-through carburetor. So we ran the CSU blow-through carburetor and tuned that, and we've had good luck with it. You use it lots and lots, and it's always worked pretty well. So we just put that on the dual plane intake, and yes, you can run a blow-through turbo or centrifugal supercharged blow-through carburetor application with a dual plane. It does not have to be a single plane. So here's what happened. We had Turbo Smart wastegates on it to control the boost. Here's what happened when we did our first boost curve. This was at 8.9 pounds of boost. And you can see we got a nice curve, good power. We're up right near 600 horsepower, 598 horsepower. So I think we can call that 600. I would round up to 600. And we also had 569 foot-pounds of torque. Yep, 569 foot-pounds. And as you can see, if you look at the curves, the shape of the curve, because we had a fairly consistent boost curve, the shape of the curve mirrored those of the horsepower and torque curves that were there naturally aspirated. So when we made the modifications to our naturally aspirated motor, they enhanced they were enhanced by the extra boost provided by the turbo setup, but it didn't really change because we had a consistent boost curve. So the torque curve was basically the same and the horsepower curve was basically the same. There's just more, and there's more everywhere, and that's why we love boost so much. So because we do love boost so much, we decided that this wasn't quite enough, although we weren't going to go crazy on this. We wanted to add a little bit more. This was just kind of a a dyno test to see how well the turbo stuff was going to work with the stock short block. So here's what happened when we added boost. We went up to just over 10 pounds on this one, and it did what it always does when we added boost. It improved the power output everywhere. So we're well over 600 horsepower. As a matter of fact, we're getting a lot closer to 650. We were near 640 horsepower, and the peak torque was up at 606 foot-pounds of torque. So as we can see, I think it's safe to say that a stock 350 short block certainly is good at this power level without any problem. And we know from previous testing that that stock Vortec motor will go way over this. Now, I don't think you have to have the CNC ported heads that we did, and the camshaft I think works fine. The dual plane obviously works fine. I think you could get most of what we have here with just the Vortec heads, certainly if they were ported, but even stock ones, because what you do is just, we'll make the same power, it's just going to be a little bit higher boost. So let's get to our conclusion and figure out if we want to compare something like this to a Junkyard LS. Let me know what you guys think. Okay guys, what did you think about our turbo Junkyard small block? Now, it answered one specific question. Yes, you can go to the wrecking yard. You can pick up a used high mileage 350 Gen 1 small block, and you can add boost to it. And naturally you want to put ring gap in it, and we did put aftermarket aluminum heads, a decent cam, and a dual plane intake, and all of that worked well. But it shows me that because the weak point in all of that stuff is always something in the short block. In the case of an LS, or probably in the small block as well, it's usually the connecting rod. But it shows us there's definite potential there. Now, we only ran something over 600 horsepower, so we're not really pushing it. But it likes boost. That makes me think I should do the shootout. Let me know what you guys think. Gen 1 small block Chevy versus 5.3 liter LS, both with turbos and cams and springs. Should I do it? Let me know. And again, make sure to like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff, and I'll keep testing.